5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming live.
Today we're talking from the parables. At Suncoast we teach from the Bible, principles about how to live a better life. And in this teaching from the parables, we have to first of all understand parables as a type of literature. What are they? They're stories that Jesus used to confront narrow thinking and help those in his day expand their understanding of the love of God. To understand a parable is to understand its function. Why? What is the point of speaking in parables? It provided Jesus a way to really to confront something without really confronting it. It was kind of a side door. I'm not going to debate you about this. You and I are going to disagree on it, but let me just tell you a story. Within the story, there's an ouch, a zinger. There's a strategic point. It's an intentional pseudo-confrontation, trying to hope to show more light. And in Luke chapter 15, Jesus gives us 3 parables. And for the last, this is the 4th week, but we've been talking about this theme, gone missing. To get the impact of the parables, we need to notice, first of all, the context. If you were to pick up Luke 15 and skip the first few verses and just read the parables, you say, oh, I understand the parable of the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. But if you miss the first few verses, it's really out of context, because Jesus is eating with tax collectors, which were not desirable people, and still not, and sinners, which are about the same thing. So he was eating with those who were not Jewish, tax collectors and sinners. And the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the religious elite, teachers of the law, they were complaining about Jesus having a meal with these people that he shouldn't be eating with. Doesn't he know that we're righteous? And if you want to talk to us about the things of God, we're opening, we want to listen. But you should not be even relating to those people. They're not to be talked to. And they murmured about that. But if you want to read the surface story, lost and found, you can see it, but you miss the real impact. I'm going to show it to you in just a minute. But the real impact of this parable, I think, is important for us to understand. It's about confronting these religious leaders about you just can't act that way. You can't be that way. It's an attitude of exclusion. It's an attitude of superiority, prejudice, the attitude of judgmentalism. And he confronts their murmuring. He confronts their anger. He confronts this attitude of being serious all the time versus rejoicing in life. So today we're going to look again at this, the parable of the lost son. Some have called it the prodigal son. And here's the way it starts. There was a man who had 2 sons. Immediately what pops into the Jewish leaders' minds, you mean Cain and Abel? Actually, I had 3 sons, but Cain and Abel were the most known. No, what about Abraham's sons? That's Ishmael and Isaac. What about Isaac's sons, Esau and Jacob? In each of these instances, I want to suggest to you the younger outperformed the older. There was a man with 2 sons, Jesus said, and how the story goes, well, the younger son, he said, give me my share so I can do with it what I want. And he went off, he squandered it, he wasted it. He ended up in a place where he was wanting to eat the food that he was feeding to pigs. And feeding the pigs in the Jewish society is not a very high up job. It's at the bottom. And then one day he came to his senses. He said, my father's servants are better off than I am. Maybe I should go home. And we're going to pick up here with the thought today. We looked at that last week. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. Now I want to stop here just for a minute. When you run to him, you throw your arms around and kiss him, you got to understand this guy had been feeding pigs for a while. It may not be exactly the aroma that you're used to as a rich kid. Now you've been living in a poor area. Let's go on with the story. He kissed him. The son said, Father, I had this speech. I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And he's starting to go on. His dad goes, stop. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Not just any robe, the best robe. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Obviously, he was not wearing the best robe, did not have a ring, and was not having shoes on his feet. He was pretty well down the socioeconomic chain. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. He looks kind of scrawny. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead, is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they begin to celebrate. Meanwhile, that's almost like a movie. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants. He asked him, "What's going on?" "Your brother's come, and your father's killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." And then the countenance goes even lower. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, and you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours," now I want you to pay attention, "this son of yours has squandered your property with prostitutes come home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." I think it's amazing as we look at this story. There's so many things that I want to point out to you today, and they're in your notes. You can fill in the blank if you'd like. But the first one is really a characterization. Who were these characters in the parables? The younger brother represents those who have wandered from safety and security. The younger son came to his father and said, "Dad, would you just give me my share? Go ahead and give me whatever I deserve because I'm going to get out of here." Now, what you probably don't see when you read this is what's going on behind the scenes. See, here's the first zinger in here. He's probably said, "Dad, I don't have a place here because of my older brother. He dominates all I do. I have to find my way elsewhere." And in that society, the firstborn son did dominate everything. He got the house and the lands. He got the title. He got the blessing. He was the one who carried on the family name. And the younger son really was not as significant. And he knew how his brother was. His brother's idea of family life was just so rigid. And soon the father would be gone and the brother would be in charge. And "I just can't live there, Dad, under such bondage. So just give me my share and I'll go on my way." And he leaves his dad and goes off to a far-off country, and he wastes, squanders. He spends all his money, and then hard times come on. A famine comes on the land, so it's even worse. He can't get a good job, so he's finally feeding pigs like we talked about. But something changes. He finally is so low that he longs for what he had before. He longs for love and care, which he does not have. And he comes up with this idea: I'll return to my father's house despite my brother. And one of the things I noticed, he's no longer full of himself. What a difference. He no longer was entitled. His arrogance is gone. He has no claim to the estate. He simply goes back and he's just banking on his dad's love and grace for him. This is exactly the opposite of what the listeners to this parable felt was appropriate. These were Jewish leaders. We were entitled. We're exclusive. And you shouldn't let people like the son back in at all. But notice the tension in the parable. The young said, "I don't fit here." Yeah, I'm concerned today when people come to church and they just don't fit. And would that trouble you if you were the pastor? I'm concerned that people come and say, I'm not as good as these people. I don't really, I have some issues in my life. There's a lot of things. I just don't want to be like they are. They're cold. They're indifferent. They don't want to have any fun. You ever been in churches that are cold and different, don't want to have any fun? I've been in Europe many times, and I go to these churches and they're empty. And there's a sign at one that said, "Please, no talking." And you walk in and whisper. And people are whispering, and even the priest, I hate to confess this, the priest actually shh me. And I went, "What?" Just shh. There is a place for meditation and quiet. But an empty church is not it. There is a time to be meditative and contemplative, I get it, and there's a time to rejoice. And they're two different things. And at Suncoast, we simply say there's time to be quiet, but there's times to shout and praise and give thanks to God for all the good things. We believe in rejoicing in all the good things of God. But the younger son didn't fit there because they probably were a different framework. And this tension was in his mind. And let's look at the result. He said, I'm out of here. Give me what is mine, so I can do with it what I want. And he left the security of his father, the compassion of his dad, and the oppression of his brother, and he wasted his resource. When all his money was gone, he came to his senses. As I began to study this, I began to realize that a lot of times it takes a low point in our life for us to come to our senses. When things are going great, life is good, you just keep on, but all of a sudden a tragedy happens and things change. I mean, his clarity of mind came because he was in such a low place. And he says, I can never return as a son. And probably added, my brother will see that. I burned that bridge. But my father's hired servants are better off than I am. I'm starving to death. So he comes to his senses, he sees with clarity. And when we come to our senses, we can see with clarity as well. The possibility of change is at hand. So look at the decision of the young man. I'll go back home. Where's home for you? For some, you say, I don't know. I've lived in Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and I've lived all over the country. My parents moved a lot. But can I suggest to you that each of us have a place in our heart that you know is home? And I want you to think about it. I want to go home to where my heart is. And I think when you get there, you'll find there's this presence of Christ there waiting for you. Sometimes it takes an attitude adjustment. I'm no longer worthy. I'm no longer entitled. I'm going to humble myself, my status, my ego, my will to the Father. On the journey home, the son is different. What has changed? His heart, his disposition, his understanding, and how amazing things look different after a long journey. This week I got a call from someone that goes to church here. He's been here for years. He's an addict, and a lot of you know him, and he's a good friend of mine, but he's off on the deep end. You know, he goes off on drugs and had some circumstances in his life, and I'm not justifying it, but when he goes in this place, he's just not the same person. And after weeks being there, he finally was arrested, and he's going to spend some time in jail, a long time. And he calls me every week, and finally after about the 5th or 6th week, the old guy shows up again on the phone. It's not the guy who's been running. It's the guy that's full of life, full of banter, teasing me as if I'm on the inside and he's on the outside. But you can see this transition happen. All of a sudden he's not as full of himself. He sees more clearly, and it took a low to get him there. I've seen that not only with addictive behavior, I've seen it with people who have relationship failures. They hit new lows, but all of a sudden they see more clearly than they've ever seen. They have a health failure, and all of a sudden they reprioritize the more important things in their life. They have a job loss, and they see other things. But it's a great time to see our lives change because of these lows. While he was a long way off, still in the low time, his father was looking for him, saw him coming back home. He runs to his son, he embraces him, and he kisses him. And if I'd have been the dad, I'd said, yeah, we got to get you cleaned up. When's the last time you had a bath? And he'd say, oh no, Dad, let me finish my speech. I have sinned against heaven and against earth. I know. Put the best robe on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Because he is my son. He always has been and always will be my son. Now, I want you to hear that today. And you can put daughter in there if it fits. You always have been and always will be a son or daughter of God. And nothing can change that. And notice the transformation. He said, but I'm not worthy. It doesn't matter whether you're worthy. But I'm not entitled. It doesn't matter. You still belong to me. That's the young son. Let me characterize the second character. The older brother represents a religious system and its judgmental attitude toward others. See, the older brother in this story is not just an afterthought. It's almost half the story is about the older brother. It's not just about the one who's lost. It's about the one who's still here. And I mean, the story's very clear. You know, the son comes home, the older brother comes in, he hears the music. What's going on? Well, your brother's home. What? And your dad has killed the fatted calf. And we're going to have a party. What? And he gets frustrated. It says he's angry. He will not go in. He gets angry. He refuses to go in. He throws an adult temper tantrum. Why? Because I'm better than he is. I stayed home. I did what was responsible. I can't eat with this person. He does not deserve the good treatment. He is a sinner, and he should not eat with the family. Do you get this? This emphasis? Jesus is giving the zinger of this parable. I mean, he's saying, you know, these people who refuse to eat with others, you need to understand the Father still wants to be in relationship with the others. But the Father, I love this part, he doesn't go out and scold the older brother. That's probably what I would have done. Hey, look, you need to get your act together. Come on, grow up. Don't act that way as your brother. He goes out and he pleads with him. I mean, he says, look, he's your brother. Come back in. Enjoy the party. And he gets so angry with his dad. He said, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. Never disobeyed you, yet you never gave me even a young goat that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes home who squandered all your wealth, you have a huge feast for him. You know, there's an attitude among those who have grown up in religious traditions, those who've done everything the church suggests. Sometimes their attitude needs some adjustment. Well, what kind of people are that way? They grow up in the church and do everything the church wants. I'm one of those. What do you mean? I grew up in a church, you know, we don't smoke, we don't chew, we don't go with the girls who do. That's not their motto, that's our motto. I mean, so what do you mean you don't do these things? I mean, it was forbidden to smoke, to drink, to go to movies, to swear, or to dance. The big joke in that denomination is, you know, the church does not even believe in premarital sex. Why? Because it'll lead to dancing. The worst of all sins. And you know what I discovered? As I got older, I was part of a ministerial association. I began to rub shoulders with those outside of my particular small conservative group. And I found out there are other groups in the world. I was with Catholics and Episcopalians and, you know, Methodists. Baptists were just as bad. But what I noticed about Episcopalians, if you're Episcopalian, they drink. We called them Whiskopalians. I mean, because those Episcopalians, they said, just look, if you find 4 Episcopalians, look closely, you'll find a 5th. I mean, and what I discovered about these Episcopalians, they're really good people. And I found Catholics who were good people. And I found all these different people that were outside of my conservative bubble who were really good people, and I liked them. But they did things that we were forbidden to do. They were not as good as us, and I found out they really were. So now I had the joy of starting a community church. What we focus on is not what you eat, drink, or wear. What we focus on is how much God loves us as we are. And folks, I will tell you, there's no amount of movies, not drinking, smoking, or dancing that's ever really changed my heart. But the thing that transforms me is the Father who loves me as his son, just the way I am. That makes all the difference. All the years, though, when I was a conservative, I'd say, you know, I've slaved for you, God, and these people that come home and they get the same favor as me, it just doesn't seem fair. And this older brother said, I'm angry. I'm angry with the Father. I'm jealous. I've slaved all these years. You've not even given me a goat. But then he hears from the Father, you know, I love you. And the rest of the estate is all yours. The problem with you, my oldest son, is that you think that my love is dependent on you keeping all these rules. It's not. It's not about that. You think it's the fact that you can never party or never celebrate. But what I want you to know is that I want you to smile and enjoy life. See, when the older brother thinks he deserves more, when he dictates and restricts his own lifestyle, then the older brother takes the place of God and he puts words in God's mouth. You know what he's done? He's also said to the Father, give me what is mine, and I will treat it the way I want to. I will protect it, I will hide it. And there are other parables that talk about this. We'll talk about another time. But Jesus gives the zinger of the parables here. The Pharisee and teachers of the law, the religious leaders, are the older brother. They're so busy enslaving, they forgot that God loves them, not just their performance. They forgot to celebrate and enjoy life. Religious external performance is shallow and not the point. The love of the Father for all humanity. And that includes everyone here. And you know what I'm more excited about? It includes me. That is the point. And that's what changes who I am. The Father would say, I never forced you to slave over all these foolish rituals, all these burdensome tasks. Live your life. Love other people. Show them the love that I've shown you. And that'll make a difference. Which leads me to the last thought of the day. It's this. We know who the younger son is. He's the wanderer. We know who the older brother is. He's the religious conservative. And thirdly, the Father represents God, who has amazing love and acceptance for all humanity. So, I want to ask you the question today. Which one are you? Are you more the younger brother or the older brother? And before you answer, let me just give you the answer. For me, I think there's a little bit of both in you. There's always a little bit of this wanderer, but there's always this other side that wants to keep you in check. What's really amazing to me is people who wander but are really hard on those who do wander. It's like a friend of mine, Larry Atkinson, years ago. I lived in Kansas City, and Larry was a friend of mine. We worked together, and he smoked. And Larry smoked cigarettes, and then after 6 months or a year, I forget exactly, he quit smoking. But I've never seen someone hate smokers more than Larry Atkinson. I mean, he smoked, but I can't stand people who smoke. I said, this is kind of an interesting dynamic for me. And I began to study it, and I began to realize all of us have within us this wandering side, but we don't want that at all. And sometimes we're more reactive against it. So sometimes we have a little bit of the younger brother, a little bit of the older brother. So which one wins? In the story, the younger brother, the wanderer, the sinner is the preferred. Why? Because he submits himself. He becomes vulnerable to the Father. He trusts the goodness of God despite his performance. And he's amazed at the acceptance. He is humble. So what's the story trying to tell us? God is like a shepherd. Even if he has 100 sheep and he loses one, he'll do whatever he can to find the one that's lost. God is like a lady who has 10 coins. She loses one and she turns her house upside down searching until she finds the lost one because she's not content with 9. God is the Father who has 2 sons, and he's never really satisfied until both are home. See, the greatest trial the Father has to endure in this story is the son who's so full of himself. See, the older son, Jewish leaders, would not include anyone less than themselves. The older son represents the religious leaders complaining that Jesus was eating with tax collectors and sinners. And you see the importance of knowing those first few verses when you read this parable. They were outside, frustrated with Jesus, angry, missing the celebration of life, full of themselves. Why? Because they could only see it from their religious side, while Jesus was trying to show all the love of the Father to everyone he could. So how does this translate in the 21st century? I think that's a good question. How does it work? Suncoast Community Church believes this primary value. We are a hospital, not a courtroom. We're a place where everyone is welcome. We're all inclusive. We're never exclusive. We find that that's God's characteristic. He's all inclusive, never exclusive. No matter how exclusive the church tries to be or the older brother tries to be, Jesus teaches us, hey, it's those on the margins are just as important as those that are in the conservative center. So what should I be like? Should I be more like the younger brother, wander? Should I be more like the older brother, keep to the rules? Maybe. I should be more like the Father. Showing people love that maybe they're not deserving. Giving people a break. And for heaven's sakes, let's laugh a little. There's one time in my church that I was joking around, and he's a very serious person. And I'll never forget these words. He said, such levity. If you don't know what levity is, that means such fun, such joy, such laughter. We need to be serious. And I made a joke about it. I said, wait, let me just quote you. Such levity? He wasn't my best friend, by the way. But I do believe this. If we're going to make a difference in the world, we got to do it with a smile on our face, with love in our hearts, and life full, rich, and free. Today, we can be the church of those who follow Christ. We can search without judging. We can accept without condemning. We can celebrate the love of the Father and discover this love that will transform our heart. I found it. It's true. I want you to have it because it's free and it's from Him. Can I pray for you? Father, in a moment like this, there may be some they've come here and they're just at a low point in their life and they're looking for clarity. I pray they'd find it in the love of God. There may be others that say, I've got it figured out, but I'm so angry with this person or that group. Father, I pray today that would just be dissolved in this moment. That the Spirit of love and Christ would be here. That we begin to celebrate the good things of life. Celebrate life and love and acceptance and inclusion. Celebrate those that are around us that need the love of God. Father, thank you for your love and grace. Thank you for this place. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your grace. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. As I do, I want to remind you that there's someone up front. If you need to pray, there's someone to be delighted to pray with you. But I was talking to someone this week, and it reminded me of a story, and I don't think I've ever told this story, but it's worth telling. About 25 years ago, I was in Sarasota pastoring, and I was driving home on a Wednesday night from church. Back then, we had Sunday morning church, Sunday night church, Wednesday night church, and I was driving home from church Wednesday night. Becky, my wife, was in front of me in the van with the kids, 3 kids, and she wanted to get the kids home and get them to bed because school the next day. I hung around because, that's what we do, hang around and talk. But I got in the car, and I pulled up to the light. I was on Fruitville Road. Those of you know Fruitville Road. Right, I was heading east. There's a Dodge store on your right. There's a SunTrust right at Beneva and Fruitville, and there's a SunTrust on my left. I stopped at the light. I was in the far right lane. There's 3 lanes going one direction. And as I waited and waited at the light, it finally turned green. My wife was already headed back. I wanted to help her with the kids. At least that's my story. I wanted to get home. And when that light turned green, I took off like a shot. I had a little 5-speed Honda, and I'd barely got in 4th gear. Hadn't even been a mile, and all of a sudden I hear this strange sound that makes you feel sick. It was kind of like, whoop. And I looked in my mirror, and there's these blue lights flashing. And I thought, oh boy. I pull over down a side street, and the city of Sarasota police officer gets out and he walks up to the front of the car. And I got to understand, I'm in a long sleeve Oxford cloth shirt with a tie. I wore a shirt and tie every day of my life. And I didn't even own jeans back in those days. And I sat there and the guy came up and I go, okay, I guess I was going a little fast or whatever. And he calls up, he said, hey, I pulled you over? I said, not really sure. He said, well, you took off really fast from the light, and you're going a little bit fast. I said, well, I just passed the church over here. I was heading home. Thought, that's always a good card to play. And he said, and I guess I just wasn't paying attention. He said, I can believe that. I said, well, why? He said, well, if you'd have been paying attention, you might have noticed before you took off like you're at a drag strip that I was sitting right beside you at the light. And I said, he said, look, I'm going to let you go, Pastor, but wake up. Look around you. Be aware of those things around you. Can I share a thought with you? When you think you're all alone, and it's been a long, hard day, can I suggest just look to your left or right? I think you'll see a God who loves you right alongside. I'm just here to remind you, He is always there. He loves you today. So do I. God bless. Thanks for coming.